this stuff around Dominic Raab. What is and isn't bullying? I mean, you heard Jacob Rees-Mogg in the news there talk about snowflakery. You know, I don't know. Maybe you've been bullied, and maybe it's just because you're a wuss. Huh? Or were you really bullied? I mean, what do we mean when we talk about bullying? What is it really all about? And I think it's really good to get a definition, because I guarantee you we'll all have different versions of the same word. Number to call is 0344 499 1000, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk to 87222, or you can tweet at Talk TV. What is and isn't bullying? That's what we're going to talk about legally. Joining me now is Joseph Kotrie-Monson, lawyer and broadcaster, who always helps us make sense of things like this. And Joseph joins me now. So, Joseph, legally, what is and isn't bullying? I mean, how do you know if an employer, if your boss is bullying you? Is it just a feeling? I mean, here's the question. How do you know? And this is what worries me. A lot of people are going to be thinking, boss is being reasonable with this behaviour. It's just me being, I hate that word, a snowflake. It's just me being a wuss. And from a mental health point of view, my worry is that more and more people are going to put up with more and more toxic behaviour. And I'll tell you where it'll end up. It'll end up in the health budget, because we've already got the biggest impact in employment the world over is depression. There's more people off work with depression than everything else put together. So that's why I wanted to have this very important conversation. Legally, what is and isn't bullying, and how the hell do you prove it one way or the other?
Well, good afternoon, Trisha. Happy to be here again. And before I give you that High Court definition that was used specifically by Adam Tolley, the great Adam Tolley, KC, in his investigation and report, Fountain Court Chambers, I have no link to them. I was actually just very briefly in receipt of an anonymous comment from an industry leader, somebody in what we would call, I guess, a blue chip company, who knew that I would be talking about this. And it's so interesting that the comment that you made about mental health intersects so well with this statement, this comment that I've just received, albeit anonymous. And that says it's this style of leadership which has precipitated initiatives to increase employee psychological safety across the corporate arena. Basically, you either know how to work around bosses like Raab or you don't. I personally don't think it should be a badge of honor to have to endure it. But then I'm in my industry, he says. Well, irrespective of the findings of the report, there was a defined understanding to do with a previous Foreign and Commonwealth Office High Court case. And that definition was used in Mr. Tolley Casey's analysis. And that definition is this: something is bullying if it can be characterized as offensive, intimidating, malicious, or insulting behavior, or, and this is important, abuse or misuse of power in ways that undermine, humiliate, denigrate, or injure the recipient. And it was expressly stated that the conduct may fall into one of those categories, even if the perpetrator isn't aware. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because as we'll go on to see, as far as Dominic Raab's defense was concerned, it was very much, well, there should be one of the limbs of his defenses, as lawyers say, was that part of the definition of bullying must be objective rather than how the person actually feels it. In any case, in these particular circumstances, Mr. Tolley Casey found that irrespective of whether there's an objective, there must be an awareness on the person who is the alleged bully or not. In these circumstances, some of the behavior which led to harm and distress, that harm and distress was inevitable, always inevitable, should have been seen as such.
Now, if if somebody has been, this is the behaviour we're talking about, has been flagged up with this person in the past, as it was with apparently with Dominic Raab, could you then point to that and say, look, you can't say that you didn't know what you were doing because somebody's pulled you up on this before?
Well, there are certain behaviours that objectively, irrespective of, I mean, there must always be some kind of subjective element, but there are certain behaviours, I think we'll all agree, that even if you don't intend for somebody to be bullied, if you, for example, as I think is part of this report of 50-odd pages, I think, if you summon them in front of their colleagues and dress them down, call them utterly useless, or call their work, more accurately perhaps, utterly useless, as the report has found, although Dominic Raab says those words weren't used. But those are the findings. We have to operate on that basis. Well, it's inevitable, isn't it? The thing speaks for itself, as lawyers sometimes say, that this must, irrespective of the intent becomes irrelevant. And I have to say, it's fair, Trisha, to observe that not all of the findings were upheld. And only really in respect of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the Foreign Office, we'll call it, complaint were the most serious allegations upheld of bullying. And it's not been proven that the long-term sicknesses, etc., were definitely linked to that bullying, although one might make the assumption that's not been found. To my mind, the most interesting observation with regard to Raab is actually not the legal one with regard to whether he's been a bully or not. It's his incredible self-confidence that the methods that he's adopted, in his own words, Trisha, to the investigator, the investigative King's Counsel, as somebody who is inquisitorial, direct, impatient, and fastidious. Well, you've worked with many people in the various stages of your glittering career, Trisha, and you will have noticed, and I'm sure engaged. I've been a guest in your studio, and I see how it's run. You make people feel welcome. You make people feel at ease, and that way you get the best out of them. Impatience is not generally regarded.
I know. You know what it took me back to? It took me back to reading as much as I have about this. It took me back to 1980s. I'm going back there. Newsrooms in Australia. That the smell of testosterone met you 2 floors before you actually got into the newsroom. I remember being told when I got pregnant, and I was on air up until a few hours before I gave birth, and then I was on air 2 hours after I was, after I gave birth. But I was told that, you in front of everyone, and I was the host of a nightly news show, you Sheilas, once you get knocked up, your brains go for a lot of swearing, a lot of banter, to the point where I didn't sit down, even though I was how many months pregnant, and people say, why did you work when you were pregnant? We had no maternity leave in those days. But it got to the stage that if you were pregnant, you literally try to hide it and carry on because the atmosphere was such no different. Now, I absolutely agree with you. If you want to get the best out of people, that old 80s way of doing it is not the right way. But I wanted to put to you, what about employers who say, does that mean I'm not allowed to tell off any of my staff anymore then?
Well, I think one of the interesting points that's made is so much of this appears to have taken place in front of other colleagues. And to no real purpose. Tolley has called in his findings the criticism unconstructive. He said that the conduct involved an abuse or a misuse of power in a way that undermines the person or humiliates them. If you operate on the basis that, for the most part, as most people are inclined to, Trisha, and these are my words, not Mr. Tolley's, that they will try to do their best if they're well motivated and provided clear instructions, provided they're of a certain quality. And one must assume that senior civil servants who've been in that environment, climbing up incredibly competitively for a lot longer than Dominic Raab, you know, do have a certain level of competence and intelligence. Then the way in which to do that is to encourage them, not to demean them when they don't do right. And I think there's an interesting point to be made here. Dominic Raab, karate black belt, former Oxford University boxer, you know, in the context of those types of environments where you're very hard on yourself, and that gets results according to a relatively, shall we say, relatively unsophisticated or unnuanced goal,
Yes.
then being hard on yourself, being incredibly gung-ho and say, I'm not going to make any excuses, I'm not going to accept anything. Well, that's one thing. But if you want to expect the best out of a variation of personality types, intellects, talented people who may be sensitive, then the way to approach that, probably not the politics and the management style of brute force.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I've just got to say, there's so many people in my industry that people have said, I wonder why that person, what happened to them? They just fell off the radar completely. Nobody wants to work with them. For just those reasons. They might, and the thing is, you can seem charismatic and out there when you're, you know, prime minister's question times or anything like that. But behind the scenes, if you're running people down and saying this is totally useless, that's not feedback. You need to sit with someone in a room saying, what I need you to do is X, Y, and Z. But if you come in with a reputation for being a hard baller and all of that, or immediately you're not going to get the best out of people. They need management training. I mean, that's one thing, but that these cabinet ministers don't get, do they? They don't have any management training.
But there's an interesting point here.
They just come in with the big I am.
Yeah, and you know, there's an interesting point here. Nobody has suggested that Dominic Raab is anything except honest in the way in which he approaches this. He's got a philosophical understanding of management, which is really flawed by modern standards, and it's actually ineffective. But he's not been found in this report to have lied about anything. He's said, this is my understanding of how you get results, and I think that I acted in good faith. He hasn't tried to shirk responsibility in that regard. He's saying it's a philosophical disagreement. Right. Well, and it's also to his credit that the point at which the investigation began, there is a marked improvement in his behavior towards colleagues, according to the report. Not when the allegations were made. Yeah. When the allegations were made, he didn't initially listen, and that's the report's also found that. But this doesn't sound to me as somebody who's beyond saving, I have to say, through gritted teeth, you know, and somebody who's incredibly committed to public service. It's clear from the report he works between 7:30 and 10 every night. He regards his responsibility to the public to be absolute. Unfortunately, the way in which he articulates that to colleagues he wants to do something for, it is a bit unsophisticated. And when you're dealing with a varied group of personality types, I can't stress this enough as somebody who myself is in management. You get the best out of people by finding out what that person is motivated by and needs in order to thrive, and you provide it. And that's your duty as a manager, not, as you say, Trisha, the big I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Joseph. Let's move on. Right, I'm interested in this. Savvy Taylor Swift, this was a headline this week. Savvy Taylor Swift refused to buy into FTX cryptocurrency deal. Now, there's currently, this is Sam Bankman-Fried. He was the billionaire wonder boy. His cryptocurrency empire has gone kaput, completely kaput, and there are there's a $5 billion lawsuit seeking damages, not just from him, but from 11 athletes, including Osaka, Tom Brady, and basketball stars like Shaquille O'Neal and Stephen Curry. And Taylor Swift was one person who they approached, offering glittering prizes and money. She had a look at it and said, no, thank you very much. She or her people were very, very savvy indeed. Now, I'd put to you that when you talk about cryptocurrency and oh, there's loads of money to be made, because not a lot of people really understand it, and because perhaps well, definitely in the UK, the law hasn't caught up with the whole idea of cryptocurrency. It ranges from Ponzi schemes to fraud to legitimate schemes, and it's very difficult for people to pick out which is which. But in this particular case, because Sam Bankman-Fried used so many celebrities, when it collapsed, the lawyers are going after not just him, but all of those people who said, yes, buy in. And I mean, these were huge ads showed at the Super Bowl and what have you. So my question to you is, number one, is about the whole cryptocurrency. And I know you've written about this and how we don't understand things like blockchain, and the British law is way behind US law. But also, do celebrities need to think twice about what they do and don't endorse?
Yeah, and I think that there's so much to this, and let's not forget Larry David, the fantastic comedian who's also in the firing line. I'll get it in the neck from other friends of mine if I don't mention. I do too, you know.
I love Larry David, but he will go down. Yeah,
I mean, it's so important that people regard the cryptocurrency investments with a massive amount of suspicion if it's the case that celebrities are promoting an investment. You know what? A good rule of thumb for anyone listening or watching today, Trisha, if a celebrity is required to promote an investment, it's probably not a very good investment. Why are the celebrities? Yeah.
All right, I'll know that. If somebody asked me to do it, then say no, because it's probably not a good investment.
Well, absolutely. And these celebrities think that provided they have a contract and the company seems legit and they're offering them money, and SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, you know, these were organized, these were kind of occupying an almost institutional level of respect in America at the time. You know, that doesn't change the facts that if you're offering something on the basis that it will increase in value, then you're offering an investment. And when you're offering guaranteed returns, which was kind of what was happening, then that becomes a security or an investment that requires by law to be registered. And that way it's regulated. The behavior of what people say is monitored by the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's the American version of what we call the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. And interestingly, it's Adam Moskowitz himself, the celebrated group action trial attorney, who is the one going after all these celebrities who have money, and where Sam Bankman-Fried doesn't have money. He knows they have wealth that he can go after for the benefit of his clients. And of course, those millionaire celebrities have benefited. So to some extent, why not? However, he's this specialist group action attorney who's done similar cases in the past 3 or 4 years regarding misleading statements in the market. And he says, you're right. Taylor Swift's team in negotiations said, wait a minute, can you tell me that these investments are not actually unregistered securities? She was so well advised by her lawyers and her team. She's so much more careful. The difficulties she's had with her own management and her own back catalogue over the years, which are so well documented, have meant that by now she has a great, hard, intelligent team around her advising her, and she stayed well clear. Taylor Swift is a great beneficiary of this. Taylor Swift has shown herself to be somebody who for $100 million, let her head rule over the natural instinct that we all have to get further ahead financially.
Joseph, thank you so much. It's always great talking to you because we actually get a handle on what's going on. And I know we'll be talking to you more about cryptocurrency because it ain't going to go away. Joseph Kotrie-Monson, lawyer and broadcaster there, helping us work out what's really going on when it comes to the definition of bullying and cryptocurrency and whether celebrities should endorse financial stuff. I've learned something from him. I don't know if you have as well. Stay with us. More coming up with me, Trisha Goddard, here on Talk TV.